Greetings and welcome, I'm Ash, and today I would like to give you a hand with the Total War Warhammer series. With a myriad of unique races, factions, units, and playstyles, the Total War Warhammer series represents some of the finest strategy games released in the past decade. However, everything that makes these games so incredibly fun to play is also something that makes them incredibly tricky to get into. So if you would like your first experience with either of the free games to be a smooth and enjoyable one, allow me to give you some simple tips and advice to help you get started. I'll be using footage from Total War Warhammer 2 here, since that is the game I'd recommend you begin your journey with, but all of this is generally useful information that applies to all free games. And so, without wasting any more time, here's the brief list. The Total War Warhammer series has a massive amount of keybinds you can utilize in battle. However, while the games do teach you the basics, they unfortunately don't spend much time explaining some of the important controls, the ones that let you manipulate large groups of units without any hassle. So for now, here's a brief rundown of some of the most powerful commands and what sort of keybinds allow you to do them. Control groups, Control plus 1 or Control plus 2, etc. Lock formation, Control plus G or click the lock icon above the control group. Move as formation, which is Alt plus left click and drag. Rotate as formation, which is Alt plus right click and drag. Make units stay put instead of chasing enemies, just toggle guard mode all the way on the bottom. Disengage from a fight, which is especially useful for cavalry, just press J. And manually aim artillery, which is really fun to do by pressing Insert. In order for battles to not devolve into a complete and utter mess, you need to carefully think about your positioning and formations. Most of the time, this means you'll want to find a piece of land where the terrain works in your favor, either because there's a hill you can position your range units on, or because you can funnel enemies into a tight space. A good example of why this is so important would be any unit with a gun. These units are incredibly powerful and can mince even the most heavily armored of enemies, yet their big problem is that they cannot shoot through or over friendly units. So if you want to make the best use out of your gunners, either position them on hills overlooking the battle, or create small gaps in your formations so they can fire regardless of what is happening. This sort of stuff doesn't sound like a big deal, but making the best use out of your units will win you a surprising amount of seemingly impossible battles. It doesn't matter if we're talking about guns, arrows, explosives, or even small rocks. All ranged units in the Total War Warhammer series are capable of dealing insane amounts of damage. So when you're constructing an army, don't feel afraid to dedicate even 7 or 8 slots to ranged units, as they will easily pull their own weight, provided you have enough of a front line to keep them nice and secure. I would also highly recommend having at least one artillery piece in every single army. This will not only force the AI to advance into your formations if they can't match your firepower, but it will also let you attack a walled settlement without needing to wait an extra turn for the battering ram to be constructed. Cavalry in the Total War Warhammer series is a fair bit weaker than in something like Total War Three Kingdoms, though it is still quite powerful in the right circumstance. For the vast majority of cases, this means you're going to want to attack your enemies from behind while they're already engaged in combat, or just run down the weak and poorly defended archers. Just whatever you do, don't rush. If you try to charge at the enemy archers before the front line is engaged, you're just going to make the AI redirect a spear unit or two to defend them, and your cavalry will either get poked or shot to death before doing anything of value. So as much as it sucks to watch your infantry become Skyrim guards thanks to all of the ranged fire, waiting for the perfect moment to strike will help you deal the most amount of damage and win the battle with the least amount of casualties. In every army, you will have up to 19 basic units or heroes and only a single lord. So when deciding where to put your skill points, the best course of action would be to pour them into buffing the most units possible. Giving your lord a couple of extra melee attack will make them more effective in combat, but giving hundreds of archers additional damage, accuracy, and reload speed will easily eclipse all of that. Same thing goes with making your frontline more durable in combat. That same buff spread across 1,000 spearmen will let them hold the enemy back for what feels like an eternity. So while you can make a legendary lord so powerful they can smash through half of the enemy army, you're going to have a lot more success if you focus on keeping your own army in tip-top shape, especially on the higher difficulty settings. No matter how carefully you play, sooner or later you're going to end up in a situation where you will have to fight a battle the auto-resolve says is going to result in a crushing defeat. Now, unless your army is particularly weak, I would highly recommend ignoring that and fighting the battle anyway. With careful positioning, and by baiting the enemy into bad attacks, it is entirely possible to win even heavily lopsided battles. Most importantly, even if you do lose and your entire army gets wiped out, chances are you will inflict such horrific losses on the enemy that they won't be able to just push into your land. So unlike the auto-resolve that would just wipe out all of your units and barely even damage the enemy, actually fighting the battle, even if you lose, will give you plenty of time to recover and rebuild. It doesn't matter if you're playing as the noble high elves or the savage orcs, you will need money, or teeth, or whatever other nonsense your faction uses as a currency. Without it, you cannot field multiple armies, you cannot upgrade your cities, and you cannot really do much of anything. So as soon as you have secured yourself a province, make sure to start building as many money and resource production buildings as possible. This will be a hefty investment that will likely leave you near bankruptcy, especially in the early game, but it is most definitely worth it as a stable economy will make your life significantly easier throughout the entire campaign. In the same vein, resist the temptation to rush towards the next big and shiny unit that you probably won't even be able to afford. So make sure to first build up your economy and then play around with whatever army composition you want. Just so you don't end up in a situation where you're seriously considering disbanding half of your front line to fit in another cannon. When it comes to the Warhammer series, a single strong army is significantly better than a couple of mediocre ones. The biggest reason is that every lord you hire past the very first one increases the total upkeep you pay for every single unit, which can make even the cheapest armies become a considerable burden on your early game economy. The second issue is that two mediocre armies will be less active than a single strong one due to army losses. After all, a crushing victory will leave you in the perfect position to continue your onslaught, while a Pyrrhic victory will force you to wait a couple of turns to fully replenish. So throughout the early game, when you might need to fight multiple battles in a row, it really doesn't pay off to have multiple weak armies. Once your economy is strong and your territory is far too large to cover in a single turn or two, then you should absolutely get a second or even a third army. But for the first third or so of the campaign, a single strong army with the best units you can afford will do you a great deal of good. Unless you're playing on the easiest difficulty possible, your AI opponents will be able to produce more armies than you and at a faster pace. What this means is that if you ever end up in a war with a neighboring faction, trying to play defense is only going to result in you being under siege over and over again. The best way to sort this problem out is to first defeat any attacking armies, and then go on the offensive yourself. If you use the lull between enemy attacks as an opportunity to seize their major cities, you will not only bolster your own economy, but you will also reduce their ability to field strong units. And once you have the AI on the back foot, it is going to be very easy to just keep pushing forward using the same sort of strategy and just capture all of their territory. It doesn't matter if we're talking about your home province or a city you've literally just captured. You are definitely going to want to have some growth-based buildings in there. Growth essentially dictates how quickly you can upgrade your cities to the next tier, and consequently how quickly you can access new units and optimize your money production. In other words, growth is incredibly important and should not, under any circumstances, be underestimated. Even a single upgraded growth building can noticeably speed up a province, while a full set can have you flying through the ranks in no time. And best of all, if you eventually reach the rank you need and have no further use for growth, you can always just demolish the building and construct something more useful in its place. If you find yourself in a situation where you simply cannot beat the enemy army fairly, or if they're just playing keep away and never really engaging you, give the ambush stance a try. Mouse over the map until you find the spot with the best ambush chance, and then just place your hero there, even if it is in full view of the enemy. The AI can cheat in many ways, but while your army is ambushing, they are completely invisible until they're spotted or stumbled upon. Every trap is better with a little bit of bait, however, so if you want to take your ambushes to the next level, make sure to bring a secondary lord with you, and the weaker their army, the better. Position them behind your ambushing army, and the AI will run straight into your loving embrace as they attempt to kill the exposed lord. While you will most likely want them as a part of your army since they can be absolute powerhouses, especially the mages, heroes are also quite handy to have on the campaign map. Whether it is poking holes in the enemy's walls, weakening garrisons, or simply preventing enemy lords from running away, hero actions can be devastatingly effective. Even if you don't want to spend any extra money on their actions, having a couple of heroes running around as scouts will help you intercept any attack before it even reaches you. And, as an added little bonus, you can also send your heroes to far-off lands in order to establish alliances and trade agreements with factions you might not have ever met otherwise. Just, make sure they're actually friendly. And there you have it, 12 simple tips that will hopefully make your first experience with the Total War Warhammer series a nice and pleasant one. That said, these are still complex games with a myriad of different systems working in tandem, so don't be too disappointed if your first campaign ends up devolving into a mess. At the end of the day, all of this is just a part of the learning process. So dust off the ashes, jump back in, and soon enough you'll be able to pick up any faction or even any army and just have an absolute blast rampaging across the world with them. As a final note, if you're wondering which of the free games to start with, I would highly recommend you give Total War Warhammer 2 a try first. It is by far the most polished and content-rich one at this moment, so it will serve as a pretty good jumping off point for the entire series. You can learn more about this, as well as what exactly makes it so much fun to me, in the link on the top right of your screen. Thank you guys for watching, and if you enjoyed this, or even if you didn't, please do let me know. If you would like to see more, make sure to subscribe, hit the stupid bell, pet your dragon, and do whatever other nonsense you gotta do these days. Thank you again for watching, and I do hope to see you soon. Bye bye!